We would like to welcome Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to Bloomberg Television and Radio Worldwide. Thank you for joining us. We are, as people can see, in a steel mill. You can hear it as well as you travel Canada, reassuring workers that their jobs are safe for now from the Trump tariffs on aluminum and steel. But we're also hearing that uncertainty is hurting the economy in Canada already. Companies are telling us that because they don't know what's going to happen with the tariffs and they don't know what's going to happen with Nafta, they don't want to invest right now.
Yeah, I mean, part of this tour has been about reassuring the tens of thousands of steel and aluminum workers across our country that we are working hard for them, and we have secured the exemption on 232. I mean, because quite frankly, it just makes sense. Whether you can't say that Canada is a national security risk to the United States when we are so partnered on so many different issues, and the level of complex integration in our supply chains on steel, on aluminum, means that tariffs to Canada would be harmful to American workers as well. So we've made that argument, but we continue to work forward on Nafta. I'm very optimistic we're going to be able to get to a win-win-win, as the President has said a couple of times.
But how much does it hurt that you have to wait and that the uncertainty is out there?
I think we've done so many things around innovation, around immigration, around making a case for investing in Canada. There's a lot of investors who've realized that Canada is a very good place to invest for the long term. We have a long-term stability on the economy, on politics, on social, on immigration that is very, very attractive in our diversity and all sorts of things. Yes, there's still a couple of people saying, oh, no, what is going to happen with Nafta? But I'm really confident that we're going to get to the right place on Nafta. There is an eminently achievable win-win-win out of Nafta, and we're working hard to get there.
Canada lobbied hard for the 232 exemption on aluminum and steel. You talked to the President of the United States several times. His new economic advisor, just appointed today, Larry Kudlow, was on television today saying that you were on the phone with the President making concessions hand over fist. Is that correct? And if so, what did you give him?
I think Canadians know that I've been consistent in standing up for Canadian interests. That's what they've elected me to do, and that's exactly what I'm doing. We're getting the exemption on steel and aluminum. We're continuing to stand up for ourselves at the Nafta table because we know that getting a good deal for Canada also means a good deal for the United States and for Mexico, and I'm not flinching on that.
You're not giving anything at this point?
No, the negotiations are happening around the table with our negotiators, and I won't negotiate in public.
The Mexican's chief negotiator said today that he hoped that half of Nafta could be done by the time the April meetings wrap up. Is that enough to keep them going? If you get to that point and the electoral calendar starts to intervene, are you willing to suspend the talks and say we've accomplished enough to keep it going perhaps until after the U.S. midterms?
Well, Canada doesn't have the same kinds of pressures that both the U.S. and Mexico have. We're happy to move forward. We're happy to make progress. We're diligent about doing our homework, showing up, and making sure that we're delivering creative ideas and forward movement at the tables. I understand the time pressures our partners are under. We're happy to accelerate so we can accommodate them. Canada's not the one creating time pressures at the table, and we'll continue to work at whatever speed the others want.
Well, if the talks were suspended, would that affect, as far as you understand, the 232 exemption?
Well, the President has said that as long as there's a NAFTA, there won't be any tariffs. We have a NAFTA now. We will have a NAFTA once we improve it. That sounds to me like we're pretty good on not getting tariffs.
You say we will have a NAFTA, and you have been very upbeat about the possibilities for this treaty, but I have to ask, given all the conversations that people have had and all the talk from Washington, why?
NAFTA has been good for the United States. It's been good for Canada. It's been good for Mexico. It's been good over the past 25 years. There's always opportunities to improve it, but the level of collaboration, coordination, integration of our economies has positioned North America better able to take on the world. And I know there are even greater opportunities to that. Canada's a trading nation. We've signed trade deals recently with the European Union, 500 million people, with the CPTPP, the Asian economies, close to 500 million people as well. Canada knows how good trade can be to create growth. We need to do a better job of ensuring that everyone gets to benefit from that growth, but that's very much why we're being thoughtful and progressive in some of the ways we're putting forward on labor standards, on women's rights, on things that will make sure that the fears people have around globalization are actually allayed by demonstrating that that growth can benefit everyone.
Another day, another duty. This time, the U.S. puts tariffs on Canadian newsprint today. What does Donald Trump have against Canada? He campaigned against Mexico, but he's governing, it seems, against Canada.
Well, I think one of the things is that Canada is so present in so many different areas of the American economy in positive ways. I mean, the U.S. sells more goods to Canada every year than it does to China, to Japan, and to the U.K. combined. So we obviously have all sorts of links, and with the more protectionist approach that the U.S. has given, I think there are certain companies that have decided to try and see if they can't make a profit off of pushing back against their competitors, some of whom are in Canada. We saw it with Boeing, and unfortunately what Boeing did actually just drove the great Canadian C Series into the arms of their biggest competitor, and now we have a great partnership with Airbus. So sometimes that's going to backfire on American companies trying to challenge Canada. We're going to highlight that in this case this is going to result in higher costs for American consumers, the same way the lumber issues can lead to higher housing prices because Canadian lumber is more expensive for home builders in the United States. We're trying to make these arguments. We're going to continue to make these arguments in a firm but polite way because we're Canadian.
And you're firm and polite. The next target for the Trump administration, we're told, is China. Intellectual property theft, sanctions coming. Does China cheat Canada too?
This is one thing that we've been very concerned about over the past years, specifically around the global oversupply of steel. We've brought in significant measures to ensure that we are protecting the integrity of our markets and of our country. We're going to continue to do that. We have the same kinds of concerns a lot of developed countries have around the Chinese actions. At the same time, as we know, we do have to continue to engage and trade with China. It's a growing opportunity. It's a growing economy. Getting that right requires a little bit of careful balancing act, but we're doing well.
Would you join in an international effort to put sanctions on China for intellectual property theft?
We're gonna look at the proposals that come forward. We're gonna look at how various peoples look to deal with some of the challenges out there, and we'll do the responsible thing for Canadians.
Canada politics. This is the home of the 1933 Regina Manifesto. As you travel Canada, are you finding a populist wave here in the way we saw it in the UK and the United States?
I think there's always going to be people trying to push the politics of division or the politics of envy or the politics of fear or anger. The choice that we made in the last election that we put forward to Canadians was optimistic, pulling people together, working hard, and not pitting regions against region. There's always going to be an opportunity to try and highlight divisions, but in general, Canadians have chosen to push that aside and work together, and I'm hoping to continue that.
Speaking of moving towards Asia, some people are suggesting that you've had a rough time in some of your trips to Asia recently and that you need to recalibrate your foreign policy towards the Far East. Are you doing that?
We actually were very pleased to sign on to the CPTPP, which is going to be a tremendous advantage for Canada as we open up new markets in Asia that we're benefiting from. We got concrete agreements with India on fumigation of pulses, which was an issue that we needed to settle for our farmers here. We're moving forward in constructive ways with China. We're going to continue to work hard and look for opportunities for Canadians to benefit in Asia and elsewhere around the world.
I have to ask you one last question about Donald Trump, and that is he says a lot of things and does something different on immigration, on steel most recently. When you talk to him and he tells you he's going to do something, Why do you believe him? Why do you trust him?
My experience with him on things that he has committed to me a year ago when we were at the G7 in Sicily, we talked about 232 steel and the concerns we had, and he said, look, Canada will be exempted from it. We're not going to apply national security penalties to Canada. That wouldn't make sense. And yes, there was a lot of sort of reflection and back and forth, but he ended up following through exactly as he said. In terms of commitments that he's made to me and conversations that we've had about things that matter, he has been consistent with me. So I will say that when he makes an engagement to me, he's followed up on it, and we will continue that way.